20-year-old race car driver Kevin Ward Jr. killed after he steps out of his car and onto the track. Hit by one of the sport's greatest drivers, Tony Stewart, a three-time NASCAR champion.
It's just an unbelievable tragedy. Our hearts go out to, obviously, Kevin and his family.
The deadly hit coming after the 14th lap of a 25-lap race on this dirt track in upstate New York Saturday night. Watch what happens as Stewart's car closes in on Ward's, cutting him off. Ward's car is forced up against the wall where he spins out. As the race continues, amateur video shows Ward out of his car, pointing his finger seemingly in the direction of Stewart's car. One car swerves around Ward. Stewart's car hits him. Ward's death now under investigation.
Here we go.
All right, folks, the talk of the sports world, that horrific scene as NASCAR driver Tony Stewart hit and killed Kevin Ward after an accident on the course there. Joining us now is WCBS 880 New York City sportscaster Jared Max, and we hope to be joined momentarily by attorney Adam Thompson. Jared, welcome, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Steve.
All right, this thing is sad, no matter what happens or how it happened or why it happened. But you know, I've heard both sides of this debate, and you know, whether or not there are any charges to come out of this. So, what's your take on what happened here?
Steve, there are forensics experts far more advanced than you or I, or most of, I would assume, the audience, at being able to depict exactly what took place by watching that video. With that said, from the blind eye, my sniff test, it appeared to me that Tony Stewart was the only driver who went around in the caution, who changed his course of direction at any point while approaching Kevin Ward Jr. No other driver hit Ward. Ward was standing in the middle of the track. So should I be suspicious that the guy who did hit him is the guy who had just bumped him into the wall moments before? A guy who has a pretty strong history of anger management issues. Just 2 years ago, throwing his helmet in the middle of a race at driver Matt Kenseth. Not long after that, following, forget which rider it was, into the pits, throwing punches. Reportedly, Stewart has undergone psychological treatment for anger management. So when I put all this together, while I'm not a forensics expert, what I saw was a guy who was taking an ill-advised, cheap shot, somebody who had a momentary lapse of judgment and wasn't thinking in terms that this is a man who's just standing there, who's about to be killed. So Tony Stewart wasn't trying to kill anybody, but I think it was almost like sometimes we see a hockey player skating by another and gives a last-second check and knocks him on his butt. Tony Stewart obviously didn't want this to be what happened, but from my take, it looked like he caused Ward to die.
To die, well, or to get hit at least. Let's go to Adam Thompson.
Yeah.
Adam, you're an attorney, so you could certainly give us the legal take on this. As described by Jared very eloquently, you know, here's a guy who has a history of anger management problems. Here's a guy who was just involved in possibly running Kevin Ward off the road or into the wall. Here's a guy who, from what reports I've heard, now I'm not saying they're true, but from reports I've heard, and I don't know anything about NASCAR, stepped on the throttle during a yellow flag as he got near Kevin Ward, and stepping on the throttle is like stepping on the gas, and on that kind of track it causes the back wheel to come out and put you kind of on your side, and that's what hit Ward. Plus there's also a report that he once threatened to run a driver over a couple of years ago. With all that, and based on what you've seen of the video and know of the case, where do you come down legally on this?
Well, this is a really hard situation, Steve. To begin with, you know, motocross and NASCAR driving is inherently very dangerous. So people who are involved in that know the potential's there that you can get killed in a race on the track at any given moment. But you do have an expectation that the drivers are professional and will, at the very bare minimum, follow the rules and regulations. One of the big rules and regulations is when a caution flag goes up, a yellow flag, you follow those rules because the safety of the drivers are at issue. In this situation, you have Stewart hitting Ward. Ward crashes. There's obviously some beef between them because Ward gets out of the vehicle and seemed like when the caution flag came out to be waving the flag, he was, making gestures towards Stewart in his vehicle because he was angry. Now, what's going to be the key issue is here, what do they have to support or corroborate that Stewart then went beyond what a professional driver should do and exhibited these safety measures he's supposed to be using? So far, the video inside Ward and Stewart's car showed nothing. That's what law enforcement's saying. So they don't have any smoking gun there. They're now looking, from what I understand, videotapes from people in the stands or other drivers' pits and so forth to see if there's something that was picked up. As you said, Steve, hitting the throttle makes the car go sideways. If they have proof that as all the other drivers slowed down and followed the rules, and only Stewart by himself changed directions, hit that throttle, it's shown on video, and they show the movement changing in the car, and that's what strikes Ward and then kills him, then what otherwise could have just been declared a tragic accident may end up being some type of criminal charge, whether it's going to be
now, Jared,
reckless endangerment.
Well, let me go to Adam. Adam, let me go to Jared here. Jared, now what about the argument, and then we'll get the legal take on it, that and I don't think anybody would disagree that Kevin Ward shouldn't have gotten out of the car. I have a source involved in that kind of racing who tells me that he shouldn't have gotten out of the car. He should not have been wearing an all-black suit and helmet. At that point, the racetrack is very dark. This was a feature event, so the visibility was particularly bad.
Steve, if you were driving through a neighborhood, let's say a pretty rough neighborhood, and they have a great pizza place, and you pull over, you want to get some pizza, and you pull over and you let your car leave it running, and you go inside to get a slice of pizza, and you're in there for 2 minutes, and you come out, your car is gone, and it's been stolen. Is it your fault? Yeah, somebody's going to tell you, hey, you left your car running with the keys in it in a bad area. Does it excuse the person who committed the crime stealing your car? The answer, obviously, is no. From everything I've read, this is going to come down to, and obviously Adam can speak to this, but the level of recklessness. Did Tony Stewart do something that was reckless? And from what I saw, his behavior was different than every other driver, in that, as you say, with the throttle, and from what I've read, you hit that throttle and the car, like you say, will kick out to the side, it'll fishtail. Well, why would you do that at that particular point? I think Tony Stewart made a horrible mistake that turned into a fatal mistake. The fact is, this is a guy who hasn't solved his anger issues, and that if this is the case, that he actually did do this, just maybe thinking he was going to mess with Ward a little bit. There's a price, I guess, to be paid from it. That's what happens if you don't fix what's broken.
Right, and Adam, what is that price? First of all, what is that price? Let's say it turns out. Let's say maybe there is no helmet audio like there is in the most sophisticated cars. I don't know. But let's say there was, and it turns out he said, watch this, I'm going to scare this blankety blank. And it was a scare gone awry. Would that be criminally negligent homicide? And I'm saying if. That's a big if. I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying if.
No, I understand that is a big if, and that would be huge presentation of facts against Stewart, and that would probably land.
Yeah, but I mean, what would it be? What would that? But what would that kind of thing be? Would that be? That wouldn't be murder one. He's not saying I'm going to kill the guy. Would that be
premeditated? It could be a murder two in
right,
New York State, because this is where it happened. That he showed a complete disregard and indifference to human life, and that his actions could be foreseeable, that they could cause serious harm or death to someone. Knowing that you're in a car traveling that quick and there's a person in the roadway and you're supposed to slow down, and you want to quote unquote teach him lessons, scare him. Hey, I'm the multi-time champion, experienced guy. You're 20 years old, a new rookie. You're going to get out of the car and wave your hands at me and try to show me up. Well, I'll show you up. He tries to scare him. Well, scare him is
very quickly, Adam, very quickly, 30 seconds. I don't want to give Jared the final word. What about the defense? This guy should not have gotten out of the car. It was dark. He came charging, obviously looking for that car that was driven by Stewart. What about that as a defense?
That's huge defense. I mean, if you're going to say Stewart should have followed protocol, so should Ward. He should have stayed in the car. Most drivers stay in after an accident, let them come by, clean up the wreckage in the area. And he also should have been, once out of the car, walking onto the track, waving his hands at another driver. Because, again, that's a dangerous spot and location, and the defense is going to jump all over that big time.
Jared, final word, Jared.
Steve, my take is that, remember with the O.J. Simpson case, a lot of people didn't want to believe that O.J. could have done something of what he was accused of doing. I think we're going through a process now where one of the most popular people in NASCAR, somebody who generates a lot of money for a sport, might have committed something that turns out to be heinous. Certainly was not the intent.
All right.
But
we will see, and I thank you both. Jared Max, WCBS News Radio 88, and Adam Thompson. Thank you both, gentlemen. All right, very interesting. Last week we asked you folks to vote whether or not Barack Obama should be impeached. 67% said yes, 32% said no. Thanks for participating.